My name is Maureen Cathy. I'm one of the career coaches in the Business Career Services office, and I'll be doing some moderating today to ask some great questions of our wonderful panelists, and then also to relay some of your questions as well. Sloan is helping us. She's a Walker Fellow, and she's going to help keep an eye on that chat room as well. And if anyone has any kind of issues or problems or is having trouble hearing or anything like that, you can always let us know in the chat or even directly chat Sloan and from that chat box. And we'll get those answers for you and get that taken care of. So again, just for those of you who have just joined, we are recording this session, and we are asking that other than our panelists, that you do stay on mute so that we can eliminate some of that background noise. If you do have any questions, and I encourage you to have some questions for our employers that are here with us and sharing their knowledge, you can definitely type those in the chat at any time. We'll try and insert those with some other questions that we have for our recruiters as we go along. And then of course, at the end, we will be doing that as well. So again, I'd like to welcome you to 10 things employers don't want to hear. And you'll see on that slide a great big thank you to our panelists that are here with us today. I'm going to stop sharing that slide just so you're able to see people as they speak. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, your organization, and maybe a little bit about that, who you're looking for in terms of recruiting. And we will start with the first person on my list here. So Amber, you are up if you would like to introduce yourself.
Wonderful, yes, thank you so much. So my name is Amber Lawrence. I am the Campus Relations Manager at the Select Group. So for those of you who have not heard of the Select Group, we are a technical services firm. We're headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 15 locations nationwide though, so lots of opportunity there and growing every year. For what we do, we really help connect IT and engineering professionals to companies who hire for them. So my role as Campus Relations Manager is speaking with all of you great students, right? Recruiting you guys for some of our sales opportunities. We have sales roles that are really focused on relationship building. So we don't sell a product, we sell a service. So we really look for people who are wanting to connect with people, build those genuine relationships, and be the face of the organization to sell those opportunities and different services to our clients.
Great, thank you very much. And now let's hear from Krystal Donahue from United Rentals.
Hi everyone, my name is Krystal. I do work for United Rentals, and my primary role at United Rentals is a recruiter, but I do focus a lot on college recruitment. So working with students just like yourself to find internship opportunities and full-time opportunities that could fit what you're looking for. United Rentals is actually the world's largest rental company. So we sell and rent to the construction industry. None of our roles require you to have previous construction knowledge. What we are looking for is students that are interested in sales opportunities, whether that's starting out in a sales role and growing your career in sales, or even growing more towards the operations and management side of the business as well. So we've been working with App State for quite a few years now. So thank you again for having us, even if it's not on campus this semester.
Thank you very much, Krystal. Yes, we're all in one big Zoom room together today rather than being on campus. Let us have Jacqueline from Carolina Handling introduce herself.
Hey there, my name is Jacqueline Casoria. I am with Carolina Handling. I am one of our corporate recruiters. I work with anyone from college students like yourself to more experienced folks who are at later stages in their career. So I recruit for anything from a field service technician who is going out in the field and servicing our equipment to director and vice president level positions. So quite a wide range there. If you're not familiar with Carolina Handling, we are a sales and service center for Raymond equipment. If you don't know what Raymond equipment is, it is material handling equipment. So anything you might find within the four walls of a warehouse, from forklifts and pallet jacks all the way to conveyor systems and uniforms, paper towels, whatever our customer needs, we get it for them. So we're really a full service provider for that distribution center type field. So I'm really excited to be here. I went to the Walker Business Career Fair last year for the first time, and it was one of the best career fairs I've ever been to. So I was really upset to hear that we weren't going to be able to be together in person this year, but I'm really excited that I'm still getting the opportunity to speak with you all. I was really impressed by the students last year.
Great, thank you. And then we will have Rebecca from CGI.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Teti. I am a campus recruiter with CGI. For those of you who are not familiar with CGI, we are a global IT consulting and business processes firm. We do have offices all across the US as well as globally, so a lot of opportunity there for us as well. I do focus mainly on recruitment for our Fairfax, Virginia offices as well as our Lebanon, Virginia office. But again, we have recruiters across the team to work with you if you are interested in locations outside of those two. We mainly focus on looking for students for our entry-level IT consulting roles. So that's going to be like a business analyst, a software developer, programmer analyst, cyber roles. They are all entry level. I will say you don't have to have IT or business background to be considered for these positions. We're really looking, I think, more for those soft skills and people interested in getting into IT. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. We've ramped up recruitment at App State over the past few years and excited to continue the partnership.
Thank you. Well, again, I want to thank all four of our panelists in advance for all the great knowledge that you're going to share with us today. And what I will do is I'll just sort of get the ball rolling with a few questions. And again, for everyone else on the call, if you'll be thinking of questions that you have as well. So our theme is 10 things employers don't want to hear. In order to maybe know what we should be saying, we also want to kind of keep in mind those things that maybe aren't the best things to share or hear that employers hear in an interview or an introduction in a career fair. So I'm going to ask the panelists a question, and for the panelists, any of four of you can kind of start the ball rolling with this one. I'd love to hear from all four of you on this question, but we're going to ask what are just one or two things that you don't want to hear in an interview.
I can get the ball rolling here. I think this is such an awesome topic, side note, because I think sometimes we laugh about these things, or when we hear them, you're like, people don't really do that, but it happens. So great to be aware of these types of things to avoid. I think one thing in an interview, different in a career fair setting where it's maybe quick, you're getting a lot of information. But I think coming into an interview, you never want to be like, so what does your company do? Right? I think if you're going into an interview, you should know that, right? You should be excited about the opportunity. You should have some sort of preparation done to be able to know what this company does and why you want to be a part of it. So definitely never saying that. And I think another thing too is, as a recruiter, I always ask people, what are you looking for? What jobs are you searching for? And a lot of the time I get, well, whatever. Right? And it's okay to be open. I think that's normal, especially in this climate right now. We might all be a little bit more open than we usually would be, but companies want to hire people that want to work for them. I want to hear that you are excited about sales. You want to go into sales. You're motivated by a sales environment, and I want to hear the why. That's when I get excited about candidates. So I would avoid being so open. Like, remember that you're selling yourself, and really make sure that you're doing that, right? And you're showing your interest and why you'd be the best person for that role.
I'm happy to.
Amber. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. That reminded me of a good kind of topic that I wanted to touch on. Just wanted to feed off of that. I think definitely something to avoid, a question that you do get a lot during interviews is, why do you want to work for our company? How did you hear about us? And I think one of the worst kind of answers that I've heard and that you can say is, oh, I know someone that works here, or they just told me about the job and it sounds, interesting, but I don't know, give me more information. And I do think, you need to come up with a more substantial answer than I know somebody that works here. You know, you need to really research the company, figure out why you do want to work for our company, and sell that to us. You know, like Amber said, you are really selling yourself. So we want to know, you know, what are your top 3 reasons that you want to work for us? There's a ton of IT consulting companies. You know, why is CGI your top choice? So that just kind of fed off what Amber had to say, but I think those are some things definitely to keep in mind going into an interview.
Another thing I would say to be mindful of, and many of you may not be in this situation yet, but as you do start your career and, you know, maybe your first job or your second job even is one that you don't love as much as you thought you would, and you're immediately starting to look for something else. The one thing I really dislike hearing is bashing of your current company or your current leader. I ask a lot of my candidates what you're looking for specifically in a leader, and I'm looking for answers like support and things that they, you know, they're looking for, not things that they dislike. I can kind of uncover that in your answers, but when I hear bashing and complaining, that's when I get a little concerned. Piggybacking off of what Amber said previously, I think it's okay to come in and, you know, say, I don't know a whole lot about your company. Here's what I've researched and here's what I do know. But if you could tell me more, that's a perfectly acceptable answer. But like she said, if you come into an interview having done no research and not knowing anything about, you know, who you're sitting down in front of, do a quick, you know, LinkedIn search, do a quick Google, and that'll get you a lot further than just asking that very broad question.
Yeah, and I can gosh, I went forth, everyone's used all my answers. But I would reiterate what everybody has to say. I would also say, you know, right, exactly right. We are looking to hear what you guys are looking for in a position, right? When you're interviewing with the company, not only is the company, are we interviewing you, but you're interviewing us as a company as well to make sure that we're a good fit for what you're looking for. So again, if you're not that familiar what that organization does, do your own research, come prepared with questions maybe to clarify what that organization does and how it's going to fit with what you're looking for. You know, kind of already said, but one of the things I hate to hear during an interview is when we're asking, you know, what are you looking for? You're just looking for something to keep you busy. You're just looking for that next job that you're going to take. Again, it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do, but when we're looking to hire for roles, and I'm sure I can speak for other companies, we're not looking for just someone to come on board with us for a couple months. We're looking for somebody that wants to join our team, that wants to grow with our team and help our team grow as we help you as an employee grow as well. So definitely just come prepared a little bit more on the company, how it kind of fits with what you're looking for, and ask us questions, because that is what we're here for. So definitely have some of those questions prepared.
Krystal, you actually just made me think of something. If I can add one more thing, sorry. Yes, never say, I'm just looking to get my foot in the door. Like, as a sales recruiter, I get that a lot, and I get it, right? Not everybody goes into college like, sales is it. That's what I'm doing, right? Sometimes it gets a negative connotation. You think of it as a backup plan. And, you know, a lot of people come into sales and like, I don't really know how I got in here, but I couldn't do anything else. Like, this is the environment for me. And that's okay. But if you're like, hey, I'm looking to get my foot in the door, you're telling me that you want to use my company as an opportunity to get experience on a resume to get something that you think is better. Like, that's how it sounds to an employer. And obviously that's, I'm sure, not the vibe that you want to give off or the impression you want to give off. So just be mindful of how it may come out and sound to an employer, because that can definitely be a situation where like, okay, well, I don't want to be your test run to find something else, right? So I'd be mindful of that for sure.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like a big theme there was that we need to be doing our research and have some knowledge before going into the interview, and some preparation about what we want as well. And so this kind of goes along with what we would have as our next question of, what do you wish more candidates would do before they come into an interview? So in addition to the idea of researching what that company does, are there any other additional things that you wish that candidates would do before the interview as preparation?
I love when candidates come in. I'm sorry, Krystal.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Candidates come in and say, I've read reviews on your company, and some of them are negative, and every company is going to have a negative review. I like when they come in and say, I read this negative review. Can you clarify? Because then that gives us an opportunity to really sell, the positive things that were in that review, or even clarify the negative things. It happens. I mean, there are disgruntled employees. There are people that leave us because they don't like the job. And we're able to really clarify some of those things. And that shows us that the candidate is, truly concerned about what other people feel about where they're going to work. I've had candidates that have sought out other people that work there and asked them questions, people that are in the role that they're applying for. I always encourage people to give honest feedback when that happens. So really just reading those reviews, even reaching out, asking those questions. I think we can all agree, prepare by doing research, but there's a few other steps you can take to prepare more for the interview.
Yeah, and I can back that up. I definitely always recommend when I'm talking with candidates to check us out on Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a great resource. You hear from current employees and past employees, and you can see the good, bad, and the ugly on there. And I think most people too, you can pick out the common themes of that and see if that is what you're looking for. So yes, it does go back to research, but that is really important. And the other thing I would say too, again, is to prepare some questions. Again, I know that goes back to research, but, and I saw someone in the chat ask, what a good question is. A good question is one that you're really curious about learning. It's not, hey, what does your company do, right? Because you should know that, as Amber said before, from your research. But maybe it's, so your company does this. Where do you think your company is going to be in 3 to 5 years? Where's your company looking to grow? Be curious about it. And a lot of the times when you're going through an interview process, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a hiring manager, those people typically have a wealth of knowledge in both the industry and whatever type of position you're applying for. For example, again, we recruit for sales roles. So ask them, what makes somebody really successful in a sales role at your organization, right? Ask questions that are going to continue to help you throughout the interview process.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, definitely echoing both of those things that have been mentioned already. I think something else you can do, which I think Jacqueline mentioned earlier too, is like looking up who's interviewing you on LinkedIn. That's a great way to start a conversation. Like people, when you first get on an interview, we all know, right? Interviews can be nerve-wracking. You're going to have the nerves. Even if it's virtual, it's still there. So if you've looked somebody up on LinkedIn and see maybe you both had the same major, or maybe they went to the university that you're at, right? Bringing that up, kind of breaking the ice and building a genuine relationship with who's interviewing you first is going to not only give them a good first impression, but it's also probably going to help you like take a deep breath and like, all right, we've got this, like ease into that interview, right? So I think that's a great thing to do in addition. And then also really taking the time to understand what the position is asking and what experience or how are you going to really bring value to that. I think a lot of the times I'll hear candidates say, because of XYZ, I didn't have an opportunity to get an internship, or I don't feel like I have a lot of experience. And take that out of your vocabulary, right? Because whether it's in a project, it's a class, you're in a student organization, you play a sport, you have a part-time job, whatever it is, that is experience. And you have to find, how does what I've done translate to what you need someone to come in and do? Because you can find those ties anywhere. Again, go back to selling yourself, right? Find the connection and focus on that. Don't sell yourself short or go ahead and tell the interviewer like, well, I don't have great experience, so maybe count me out. Like, no, hype yourself up. How are you going to come in and get the job done based on what you've done in the past?
Yeah, and I'll jump in. And honestly, I mean, everything that the panelists have said is true, and I do agree with all of it. I will say, I think it is important to look at your experience, like Amber said, and really, you learn skills from everything you did, regardless if it's relevant. So pick out some skills that you learned from these opportunities that you've had in the past, and figure out why they're going to be transferable to this type of role, whether it's, customer service, babysitting, a coach, whatever it is, you gain skills from that and did gain experience, like Amber mentioned. So you need to pick out the skills that really resonated with you and why they will be helpful for you in this type of role. And I think that will go such a long way. I think all of it does ultimately go back to research, but I agree. I think looking up who you're going to be interviewing with on LinkedIn, finding some commonalities, some things you guys share, interests and things like that is super helpful to bring up and kind of, make the conversation a little more conversational rather than, just asking Q&A. So I think, again, all of it ultimately is research, but it is extremely important. And there's various ways you can do that, whether it's internally looking at yourself and whether it's looking at the interviewers and the people of the company. So I think it's all extremely important research that you should do prior to an interview.
Great. So we had a question come through that kind of takes it the reverse way. We've talked about how our candidates should do their research on the organization and the role. What kind of research are you all doing on the candidates? In other words, what is something that employers would initially like to see in that LinkedIn profile or the resume that they would be interested in? And probably also on the same flip of the coin, is there something that would really turn you off?
I can jump in here. I think, speaking for myself, I see a lot of resumes every single day. So I'm always looking for those things that are standing out that's going to make me want to call someone more. So I think any engagement on campus, any leadership opportunities, anything that you're doing to keep busy, showing that you're able to, juggle multiple things, that's exciting to me. I definitely want to learn more about those types of things. I definitely look at your LinkedIn. So if you don't have one, homework, go make one. I am on LinkedIn every single day. People are looking for you that you don't even recognize or realize, right? That they're looking at your profile. They might be reaching out to you with opportunities that you hadn't thought of, but happen to be really interesting to you. So fill that out exactly like you would a full resume. People are looking at that. They want to see what you've done. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not putting that out there and having that digital resume up for people to see. But I think those are the main two I go to. When it comes to social media, I've definitely done that as well, right? Looked people up as they get further in the interview process. So I know you hear it all the time, but be careful and mindful of what you put on the internet, especially now we're in a virtual world. Like, we are looking to see how you're showing up during this pandemic, right? Are you taking this as an opportunity to be like, well, this isn't how I anticipated it, so I'm just going to kind of coast through and wait till it's over? Or are you like, hey, I'm coming to these awesome panels that App State's having because I want to get more career development while I'm prepping, so when people are hiring more, I have the best resume and all the skills to really land a job that I want. So be mindful of what you're putting out there, and just, don't post anything crazy that an employer might say, maybe I don't want to interview you even though I thought I did.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with all of those things. I do a Facebook search, I do an Instagram search. I'll be totally honest. LinkedIn is usually my first go-to, and if I can't find you, I move on to the next social media site. So be mindful of what you're posting. Even more simply, your resume says a lot about you, how it's written, how it's laid out. I know a lot of you are way better with Microsoft Word and everything else, all the other tools there are to build resumes now. Mine's very simple, and it always has been. But I would say the less flashy, the better. It's great to have, color and photos and things like that. But if there's too much to look at, I'll be honest, sometimes I just scroll to the next one because it's a lot to jump around when you're looking at 20 to 100 resumes a day, depending on what the day looks like. If there's too much to unpack on one sheet of paper, it likely will get moved to, moved on to the next person. So keep it simple, make it stand out, but it doesn't need to be a I don't even know what, an ad, but I would say, even things like spell check, grammar check, have someone look it over, proofread it. I'm a hard person when it comes to grammar. If yours is not looking good, that shows me about your attention to detail. So simple things like that, just be mindful of.
Yes, and I can jump off that because I will say specifically for our company, I generally am just looking at your resume. Honestly, I don't do many searches just because of the volume, and your resume does speak volumes, and how it's laid out and how it's worded, the grammar, the spelling, and what's on it. Just making sure that you're listing things that are going to be relevant for me to see if you're going to be good at this job, or if you're going to have background or skills that are going to be relevant. I don't necessarily think you need to be listing all of your interests, things like that. Try and keep it simple. I agree. I think, the simpler, the better. I will say too, something that I do love seeing on resumes, especially if you may not have relevant experience, which is generally the case. You're all entry level, or you're still in school, we know that. So I think really highlighting projects and relevant coursework that you've done is extremely beneficial for me, because, say I'm looking at a technical software developer resume. Of course, you're still in school. You may not have direct experience doing coding and programming, but seeing what you've learned in your classes, different languages you've been taught, coding projects that you've worked on, that's really helpful for me to say, oh, okay, you do have at least that coursework experience that you can build off of. So I think highlighting those projects that you've worked on, even if they're not relevant, I still think it's extremely important to highlight the skills that you've learned in your classes. So I think resume is a huge thing, especially for our company, that we truly look at. So just making sure to proofread, send it out to your friends, family, have everyone look at it and give you some advice.
All right, let me jump in here with another question. We talked about that some of the questions that people need to be prepared to ask. Which questions that you ask your candidates do they struggle with the most? And then how might you suggest that they fix those struggles?
I can start on this one if we want. I think one of the questions that I ask that has the most struggle with it is when I ask a candidate what their biggest strengths are and what their areas of improvement are. That's an important question to know, right? You should definitely know your strengths. We were talking about confidence before. Know what you're good at, know what you can bring to the table, and recognizing and being able to speak to your areas of improvement shows a lot as well. It shows that you understand where you need to continue working harder at to improve yourself. Being aware of that is something that's really big. So that is the one question that I ask that most students actually struggle with.
I'm definitely the same. Any of those that I'll kind of quote unquote say they have a negative side to it, right? So what is your weakness? Where was it where a manager didn't lead you the way that you were motivated by? Something like that, right? Where you put in your mind, you're connecting it to being a negative question. I think the biggest thing to remember is we're all human. We all have mistakes. We all have opportunities to improve. Make sure you're not being negative about it in those areas. Make sure you're remaining positive. Anything that you're learning, right? Maybe you say that your weakness is your organization, but you're like, I know this, and the steps I'm taking to get better are I bought a planner. I have, an online calendar, whatever it is, right? Be authentic, be genuine. Don't make up, I'm too organized and that's my weakness, right? Like, be real. Nobody's perfect. We all have somewhere. So find that and just make it, a positive. How are you working on it? What are you doing to be better?
Mine's a little different, actually. I always ask candidates, if you could build your dream job, what would that look like? And I find that a lot of candidates really struggle with that because a lot of times you don't know exactly what you're looking for, and that's okay. And I'm not looking for an answer like, I want to be a sales manager or I want to be a recruiter. You don't have to know the title of the job that you want, but I want to know what you're passionate about and what motivates you. So things like, a supportive environment. I want somewhere that I can have a flexible schedule or, you know, be customer facing. I'm looking for answers like that. And I don't think that folks always understand the question. The people that do understand it and are able to answer it with the things that they are looking for in a maybe company culture or in the type of job that they're looking for, always they always succeed in those type of interviews. But be thinking about the things that motivate you and the things that you're interested in, rather than things like job titles and responsibilities. Those kinds of answers are okay, but I'm really looking for where your passion lies.
I'll just jump in. I usually do interviews early on in the process, and then our consultants kind of take over. So I do agree, you know, kind of with what everyone has mentioned. I would just say is just general advice. You know, just really think outside the box, kind of like Jacqueline was saying. You know, we're not looking for that you know, cookie cutter answer. We want to hear, you know, from your heart, from your head, what you truly believe, and think, you know, outside of the box a little bit. I think, you know, the questions that we're asking, if they are, you know, obscure, if they're negative, we're asking for a reason. It's not to trip you up. It's to kind of see the way your brain works, the way your mind works. So just think out of the box. Don't tell us an answer you think we want to hear, you know, kind of like Amber was saying. If we're asking for a weakness, don't give us, I'm too organized, you know, give us something that we're actually looking for. And I think that will go a long way.
Thank you all. I'm going to ask a question that obviously is probably on a lot of people's minds, because we are in this virtual world right now and many interviews are happening virtually. So I'd love to hear if you have some don'ts that are related to virtual interviews, or some things that you've seen people do that you wish they had not on a virtual interview.
Turn your camera on. Keep your camera on. Make sure that you are in a place where it is going to be distraction free. I know all of these are like, duh, but I interviewed someone the other day who had to talk to me from her garage because her kids were inside, which is okay. But when you're interviewing with just light behind you, it makes you very dark. And it looked like the anonymous tip line on 48 Hours the whole time. So camera on, blank background or simple background, nothing distracting. Make sure that you are wearing a real outfit. I know everyone jokes about like professional on the top, pajamas on the bottom, but when your kid comes in or your dog comes in or something happens where you have to shut the door and you do have to stand up, it's never a good look when I can see your Bud Light pajama pants. So be mindful of anything that could go wrong during the interview, because you never know if you're gonna have to stand up, if you're gonna have to shut the door, turn a light on, whatever. Just be prepared for anything like you would in a regular interview.
Yeah, great points there. I think to build on that, practice with the platform that you're using. There's so many different, right? You know, right now we're on Zoom, there's WebEx. We use Microsoft Teams at the Select Group. And something really interesting that we did not know in the beginning is like with Microsoft Teams, you can access it on your phone, but when you use video on your phone, it zooms into right here for the other person, but you see your whole self. Super awkward, right? Like you think everybody can see everything. So sometimes you're kind of like scooting in closer because you don't want like maybe your whole outfit showing, but all we see is like this. So practice with the platform, understand, you know, what's going to be seen, make sure your background isn't distracting. You know, I think that a lot of employers right now are really understanding of just like, you know, what do you have access to? We're all doing the best that we can with what we have. So, you know, if you are not using a computer, you're using your phone, prop it up. You know, don't take me on a roller coaster tour of your home while you're trying to talk to me. It's very distracting. And just be mindful, you know, if you have roommates and they're walking around, you know, if you have a dog and they're coming in. While I love to see all the dogs and cats, and that's my favorite part of meetings these days, for an interviewing, it can be distracting. So just make sure you're limiting all of that. You're setting yourself up for success, because not only is that going to distract the interviewer, If something like that happens, that's going to distract you in an already nervous environment. You're going to get sidetracked. You're going to forget what you were saying. You're going to get flustered. We've all been there. So eliminate those. Don't have your cell phone next to you. Close out your email. Avoid having things pop up so you can just be totally engaged in the conversation in front of you.
I agree. I mean, there's only so much you can say with these. I think as long as you, you know, are prepared, you're treating it like you were to be going in the office. You know, you're trying to minimize distractions. Again, you know, like they've said, we are aware that this is kind of a different time. We know that it's not going to be perfect. You may have dogs coming in, you may have children, and there's nothing you can do about it. But obviously, just minimizing as much as possible and treating it as closely to an in-person interview as you can, I think is the best you can do. And again, we're all very understanding. It happens to us all the time. We know there's going to be technical difficulties. You know, I've had, you know, interviews kind of shut down, and I've just had them, you know, chat me their phone number and I give them a call. You know, whatever is going to make the most sense to go through the interview as normal as possible. You know, we're open to that. So just keeping in mind, as long as you guys can hold up your end, we will as well.
Thank you for those tips. I think even in these stressful environments and when things happen like that, what you can show the employer is how you handle those kinds of situations if something occurs. So definitely keep that in mind. Try not to get overly flustered and roll with it a little bit. So I'd love to hear if anyone is willing to share maybe an interview horror story or something that I think Amber said earlier, you know, that's the things that everybody thinks that doesn't really happen. You know, I don't have to worry about that. Is there anyone that has a story that they'd be willing to share?
I have a story that's coming to mind, not necessarily an interview, but even before that. So I was like, already bad impression. Your voicemail, what does it say, right? I have called somebody before and their voicemail yelled at me. I was scared. I was like, what is happening? I was super confused. I didn't know what was going on. Like, that's a first impression too, right? The interviewing starts when we reach out, whether that's through, you know, different, you know, pre-COVID when we were on campus and meeting you in this type of environment, how you're showing up today on this call, right? That's the first impression for us. When we give you a phone call, like, treat it all as an interview because we're going to remember these things. So if you have a number who calls you, you're not familiar with, you're not in a place to answer the phone, don't, right? Maybe listen to their voicemail, call them back. If you answer, you're not prepared, say, hey, you know, right now is not a good time. Can I call you back at, you know, a certain time? We get it, right? Especially if we're calling you in the middle of your day and you're not prepared for us to be calling you. And it's okay to say, hey, right now is not great. Let me follow up with you. And then maybe you want to do that research we talked about, right? Get a little bit more prepared for the call. But yeah, I'm sure there's been plenty of funny interview stories too, and I can think a little bit more, but that always comes to mind, just like the voicemail, because I immediately was just like, I don't want to call back. Like, that was terrifying.
Yeah, I guess mine may be a little more post-interview. I've had some bad interviews. I've had people show up. I've had some bad interviews, but post-interview, I would say, if your recruiter or if the person interviewing you says they will get back to you at a certain date, give them until that date to get back to you. I would say just the most annoying thing, to put it blankly, is when I get 3 or 4 or 5 emails from a candidate within a week asking for updates. I promise I will follow up with you and I will hold to what I say, but please don't email me and call me a million times a day to find out what's going on. If you haven't heard from me by time I tell you I'm going to respond to you, it may have fallen off my radar and I will apologize for it. And that's when I think it's okay to check in. But before that, just give us a little bit of time to get all of our ducks in a row. There may be some, factors that we're trying to figure out before we, give you a concrete answer or, even get back to you. We may be working on other things in the background, but give us a little bit of grace, not to sound harsh, but you're not always the only person we're interviewing. So I would say, just be mindful of how often you're reaching out. It can get annoying.
Any other horror stories that our panelists would want to share, or
Yeah, I don't think specifically a horror story. I just think, things that we notice, and it might be different in this kind of virtual environment, but just handle yourself professionally. That's something that I'll always remember after an interview. The way you were dressed, the way you spoke to me, the way you carried yourself, the way you addressed people. We usually have in our office on-site interview days, so you're with us for the whole day. We have lunch. Just throughout the interview process, just make sure that you're being professional and respectful, and you're appropriate. Whether that's your dress, your appearance, or just the way that you are speaking with us, members of the panel, members of the just other interviewees that you're interviewing with. And I completely agree with Jacqueline. We have a very high volume of candidates, and we are doing our best to make sure that we get back to you in a timely manner. And you have to give us at least the time that we said to get back to you, because if you email me 6 times before that date, then it's just a bad taste in my mouth. I gave you a date. If after that you haven't heard from me, please follow up. But I completely agree. I think that's something to be mindful of, and just be professional throughout the entire process, whether it's from the first phone call, your first impression, like Amber was saying, to the very last, until you hear from us with an offer. Remain professional through the entire process.
Thought of a horror story. Krystal, I don't know if you have one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, honestly, I can't really think of one, but I will reiterate Amber on the voicemail. That's probably the biggest horror stories I've had is hearing people's voicemail when you call them profanity, super unprofessional things in people's voicemail. Also, your email. Make sure that your email is a professional email. I know a lot of you all here are students, so you're most likely using your university email address when you're applying to positions and communicating by email with potential employers. But if you're not, make sure the email address that you're using is also professional. And just one thing on the email, totally separate from a horror stories, but if you are graduating and you're applying to roles, make sure that you have access to your university email address after you graduate, because some candidates will fall off because they've applied or have their university email address on their resume, and then they don't have access to that after they graduate. So employers are reaching out to them by email potentially, and they're not getting it because they no longer have that email. So totally side note, but hopefully Amber's horror story is better than what I can give.
Thought of one. I'll share it with you guys. So we had a level of virtual interviewing before COVID hit. As I mentioned, I am on the talent acquisition side, right? So I kind of start the process, and then I'll flip you to a hiring manager if I feel excited and think that you're going to really bring your A game and impress them and could get hired at the select group. So this was a video interview I had set up with a candidate. I won't get too much in detail, but it was planned, right? We both knew well in advance that we were going to be on a video call at this time for this position, followed up with a confirmation and everything. And this person answered late, and I kid you not, like in a Costco under a shelf on their phone. And I was like, what is happening? You seem like you're in a weird situation here. And I'm very direct. I let them know, clearly you're not prepared for this. And if you're not taking this seriously, then I'm not going to take time out of my day to have this conversation with you. And if you decide that you want to take it seriously, please feel free to reach out and let me know. And not to be mean, right? But I think that you need that feedback. You have to show up with your A game to interviews. It will not be well received, right? I no longer want to spend time out of my busy schedule to interview someone who knew I was meeting with them, but was at a Costco, not dressed professionally. Like they totally forgot, but just hopped on anyway and just like tried to crouch in a corner to get on. It was super weird. I felt really uncomfortable. I did not want to talk to that person anymore. So just be mindful of that, right? We have busy schedules. We're meeting with you because we're excited. We want to, hear what you're interested in. Do we have an opportunity that you might be a great fit for, right? And see a lot of success in. But if you show that you're not excited and interested, then I'm totally written it off. And I feel like I'm not using my time wisely by spending time with you.
Definitely a good thing to keep in mind. wanted to make sure, as we're kind of getting closer to the end of our time, that if any of our students and guests on the call have any questions, please be sure to type those in the chat. And if you would like to just let me know you have a question even, then I can address that and call on you, and you can go off mute and ask that question. But we'd love to hear if there are any questions that you all have for our excellent panelists. As you're thinking about that, in case we, maybe I'll just have the panelists think if there's one final tip, expert piece of advice that you'd like to share that you haven't had a chance to say yet. And maybe we can hear from some of you while people are thinking if they have any additional questions.
Can throw something out there. One friendly reminder I always just like to share with students, coming into an interview: be yourself, right? I think that sometimes we get in this mindset of going into an interview, we're so worried, am I going to check this company's boxes, wanting to button it up and answer the way that we think that they want us to. But the reality is you don't bring that version of yourself to work every day, right? You bring your whole self. You bring, your personal self, your professional self. It's all one. So be authentic, be genuine, really connect with the company, because if you feel like you can't, then maybe that's not the right place for you anyway, right? You really want to make sure that you're connecting with a company who has similar values and that align with what you're looking for, that are going to offer the things that you need to really feel success and valued in a company. So ask those questions, be curious, really show who you are, and then let the process fall where it may. Maybe that's not the right opportunity for you and something else is better out there. Or maybe it's great and they love to see the authentic you come out. But always be genuine, I think, and don't be afraid to show who you really are, because a company should really appreciate that.
Yeah, don't forget that you're interviewing that company to see if it's a good fit for you, just as much as they're interviewing you to see if it's a good fit for them. If there's anything in an interview that makes you uncomfortable, that might not be the job for you. And if that's your only job offer, it's okay not to accept it. If there is something about that company that doesn't align with your beliefs or your values or anything along those lines, you do not have to take that job. Something else will come along, and it is okay to be without a job for a few months after college. If you don't have something lined up for the day after you graduate, it is okay. And if you tell an employer after you've interviewed a few times, I've had some offers, but they didn't align with what I was looking for, I would respect that a lot more than you taking a job and quitting after 2 months after realizing, and if that happens, that's okay too, but I would rather hear that you were picky than you took a job just to take a job.
I agree. Honestly, just kind of bouncing. Those are both things that I was going to say. You are interviewing the company as much as they are interviewing you. You have to be real. I will say I was at an opportunity that it wasn't for me, and you want to try, and when you're in the interview process, you like Amber said, you kind of think you have to say exactly what the company wants to hear, and that's just, it ends up not being beneficial for you because you're not going to be in the right position for you. Definitely do your research. Make sure you know what the company values are, what they stand for. Do they align with yours? I think to Jacqueline's point, you don't want to just take an offer because it's the only one on the table, because ultimately, this job is what you're doing every day. You spend most of your time here and doing this type of work and with these people. You need to make sure it's something that you're going to enjoy. And I can't stress enough, you just need to make sure that they align with what you believe in and what your values are as well. So I think that's definitely the most important thing going into an interview at all.
Wonderful. I have not seen any additional questions in the chat. So I'm going to give one more final call as we've kind of come to the end of our time period here. Anyone have a burning question that they want to ask our panelists? Well, we have heard a lot of great advice today directly from people who are in these roles. And so I think that that is always important to take that to heart and use these tips that you've been given as you go into the career fair on Friday, and then the interviews that might follow from there. And if you are still early on in your process, there's a lot to just make sure that you know going in about doing your research on the organizations, doing the research of yourself, and knowing kind of what you want and what you bring to the table. That seemed to be a lot of the themes that we heard today, and just be your authentic self. So I thank our panelists so much. Amber, Rebecca, Jacqueline, Krystal, thank you so much for all of your advice and spending time with us this afternoon. And if anyone has a final question as we wrap up that you want to type in, and we can pass that on later to our panelists, that was fine as well. But we are at the end of our time together. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for having us, guys.
Good luck.
All right, Sloan, we did it.
That was great. I thought that was really good. And I thought everything went smoothly. So,
Well, I know you didn't have a whole lot that we need to, but that's a good thing. I think it's always good when it does go smoothly and we don't have to put out.
yes, that's the goal.
Exactly. Well, I don't think I was just going to check that chat real quick and see. I think it was all thank yous. I don't think there were any additional questions. So
yeah, that's all I saw. Just thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.